It's just an anti-yes.
Social constructionism, biological essentialism, science denial from the left and the right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure about you, but I'm old enough to remember a time when it was the right-wing, conservative, Republican, Christian people who were trying to block science, who were, to some degree, against science or anti-scientific and anti-intellectual. Always trying to erase the boundary that separates church and state, pushing religion in school, not wanting to have evolution taught in schools, deriding science because it doesn't go along with the Bible. Christians want the earth to be a few thousand years old, so therefore they oppose things like carbon dating, archaeology, biology, evolutionary biology, of course, paleontology, and then there's the climate change deniers. All of these anti-scientific, anti-intellectual efforts, they still exist, however they've quieted down, coming from the right. Now it's rearing its ugly head coming from the left. Instead of denying evolution and biology, we have the doctrine that biological essentialism is bad. In other words, you can't insist that if I have a penis that I have a penis, because that's biological essentialism. No, if I say I don't have a penis, I don't have a penis, even if I do have a penis. It's important to note here the difference in definitions between gender as it's used by some and gender as it's used by others. Most definitions of the word gender, if we're not talking about language, most of the time gender is synonymous with sex. The definition of gender might be something like the state of being male or female, depending on the species, because mushrooms, for example, have 4 genders or 4 sexes. But then other references, like for example the Oxford Dictionary, define the word gender as something that's socially constructed. So in other words, in our culture, females tend to wear the makeup, have their hair long, wear high heels, dresses, skirts, etc., instead of the males. However, in some cultures, there's a tribe in Africa, for example, where men wear makeup, and they're the ones who show themselves off in what's considered to be sexy attire and jewelry, and they are put on display as a sex object while the females pick them out. And then you have certain subcultures, like for example the goth scene or the glam metal scene, if it still exists, it once existed, and the rave scene, the techno scene, where it's not unusual for the men to wear makeup as well as the women. So a male, a person with male chromosomes and a penis and certain hormones, can be a woman if that male puts on makeup, certain kinds of jewelry, dresses, high heels, acts a certain way, speaks a certain way, and etc. And a female can be a man if she presents herself in a manly fashion. One of the current terms for this sort of thing is social constructionism. It's called social constructionism basically because, well, for the same reason why they say gender is a social construction. So they've changed the word gender from being synonymous with biological sex to being a social construction. In other words, it no longer refers to your inborn biology, it refers to how you wear your hair, whether or not you do makeup, what kind of clothes you wear, how you act. So this sort of thing is called social constructionism. It's the idea that a gender is something that is mediated or decided upon by society itself. And different societies have different social constructs regarding gender, and so in their belief these things are socially constructed. Well, obviously those things are socially constructed. It's just a shame that they decided to change the word gender to mean those things. And now they're trying to change the word sex. Here's the thing, they first try to reject the biological aspect of gender. They say gender is no longer a biological thing, it's a socially constructed thing. But then in certain places they throw that out too. Now gender is whatever the individual says it is. So in other words, if you're in a culture that considers things like makeup and high heels and wearing dresses to be something that women do, but you as an individual within that culture decide, no, makeup, high heels, dresses, that means man, then in certain places, like in Canada for example, you are legally deemed to be correct and everybody else wrong. So that is not social constructionism anymore, it's just individuals making stuff up. So to some, gender is a socially constructed thing. It's how you behave and how you present yourself. In the hard sciences, however, gender means the same thing as sex. So there's some confusion there. And some would argue that this confusion is deliberately generated by some, with an agenda. Well, that was just the first step. Now it's moved beyond that. Now it's, you are a bigot if you insist that a male has to have a penis and females have to have vaginas. Somehow that's bigoted. If you actually think about it, that is no less ridiculous than any denier of science and biology coming from the right. from the Christians, from the Republicans. In fact, the proposition that evolution is not real, in some ways is far less ridiculous than saying that a male is not a male, or that it's bigoted to say that a male is a male. Now, I hope you don't think I'm making the fallacy of cognitive symmetry. The fallacy of cognitive symmetry is one in which you say that, well, it's the same thing on the left and the right to the same degree. They both do it in equal measures. Well, notice that I pointed out that they don't. It's very important for me to mention that what is driving a lot of this opposition to biological essentialism is an opposition to the idea, or perhaps I should say the fact, the biological fact, that people are almost always born either male or female. This is why people like, say, Professor Nicholas Matt says that there is no such thing as biological sex.
It's not correct that there is such a thing as biological sex, and I'm a historian of medicine. I can unpack that for you at great length if you want, but in the interest of time, I won't. So that's a very popular misconception.
Excuse me, the fuck did you just say?
It's not correct that there is such a thing as biological sex.
You're a moron.
The argument behind that is, no, there is just this gradient, smooth, evenly distributed grayscale from one end to the other, and nobody's truly at one end or the other end. We're all in between somewhere.
It's easier to see how sex is actually a continuum with male and female at the ends. It's not just two strict categories, right?
Actually, only a fraction of 1% of people are intersex. That is, people who we would not call male or female. In the English language, we say that human beings replicate through sexual reproduction. Not because there's some sort of inborn essence. I'm not making a biological essentialist argument here. I'm not saying there's some sort of platonic essence, some sort of metaphysical essence. I'm saying that words like male and female are words that we assign to human beings based on their primary sex characteristics. Their DNA, their genitals, etc. There are, of course, exceptions to this rule, people who are not entirely male or female or not functionally either, in terms of reproduction. Like many other things, this does not fit entirely into one category or the other, and these exceptions to the rule are, well, exceptions to the rule. Consider the grayscale on your screen. This represents a smooth and even distribution between black and white, and this is how they want you to conceive human beings and their sex. However, in reality, we have something a lot more like this. Simply stating that almost all human beings are functionally what we put the labels male and female on is considered hate speech by people like Nicholas Matt. That's what they oppose. So in other words, it's these people who want to change the word gender from its actual scientific meaning to the social constructionist meaning, and, well, basically change the definition of everything. All things must be bent towards their will. All things must be subsumed to their one pointed agenda. And these anti-science, anti-intellectual efforts are actually being coded into law. We have the laws in New York City that make it illegal to not use a person's preferred gender pronoun in certain situations, like if you're a government employee, or even if you're an employee in a store, a private business. Then you have Bill C-16 in Canada. Well, actually, it's no longer a bill, and that's just the first step. This doctrine of biological essentialism is being taught in colleges. It basically breaks down to this. If you insist that biology is real, then you are discriminating against certain people's identities. So in other words, if a person has male hormones, has the male chromosomes, has a penis, and they claim to be a female, and you do not agree, then you are committing the crime of biological essentialism. You're basically saying biology exists, and therefore you're counted as some sort of bigot. They want to make it so that biological sex is a construction too. Well, it's not. You could say that 2 + 2 = 5 all you want. You could pass laws that make it illegal to say that 2 + 2 does not equal 5. But 2 + 2 will never equal 5. You will never be able to take 2 apples, 2 more apples, put those together and have 5 apples. Oh, but that's where creative math comes in, I guess. Think about George Orwell's 1984. In that story, towards the end, O'Brien, representing the inner party, Big Brother, the oppressive state, is representing the view that could be described as the social constructionist view. His view is that 2 + 2 = 5 if you convince enough people that 2 + 2 = 5. Winston represents the view that 2 + 2 = 4 no matter how many people agree that 2 + 2 = 5. Well then, O'Brien then uses torture to convince Winston that 2 plus 2 equals 5. Not to agree that 2 plus 2 equals 5, but to actually believe that 2 plus 2 equals 5, through enough torture and conditioning of his mind. And in the end, it is Big Brother who wins. In the end, Winston does agree, and actually believes that 2 plus 2 equals 5. Because enough pressure was applied. And it's ironic how these people try to flip the script. They try to use 1984 as a tool to serve their agenda. They have this vague notion that, hey, if you understand 1984, then you understand that it's important to avoid the warning in 1984, so therefore agree with us. And they're counting on you just sort of shrugging and saying, okay. They're counting on you not actually applying critical analysis and looking into this and seeing, well, actually, no, they have it exactly backwards. If anything, their efforts are like that of Big Brother. And our resistance to that is like Winston, until they finally break Winston. So if you think about it, the social constructionist view can be likened to that of the view that 2 plus 2 equals 5 if we force you to think so. The opposition to this, of course, would be to say that no, 2 apples and 2 more apples will never equal 5 apples, no matter how many people agree that they do or even believe that they do. My point here, folks, is that there seems to be this deeply irrational aversion to science and intellectualism. It used to come mainly from the right, but now it's coming mainly from the left. It doesn't matter where it comes from. It doesn't matter if it's coming from a official religion or a pseudo-religion like political correctness. It is, flat out, factually incorrect, not to mention very unwise. Another realm of scientific fact that these anti-science, anti-intellectual far leftists are trying to shut down is the study of differences between men and women. They do not like these studies. They deem these studies to be sexist. There are studies out there that show that there are differences between men and women in what they choose to do in life and what makes them happy. There are studies that suggest that if you remove all the social factors and you leave only the biological factors, that differences between men and women, what they like, what they want to do, maximize. In other words, there are social factors in place that influence men and women to be more alike in their behavior, but if you remove these social pressures or these social factors, then the differences maximize. In other words, men and women are naturally quite different, even though society minimizes those differences. Well, studies like this have been deemed to be biological essentialist, and therefore bad. Colonialist tools of oppression. Heck, they're even teaching in colleges now that the scientific method itself is some sort of colonialist tool of Western educated, industrialized, rich democracies. They're trying to undermine objectivity, science, reason, and logic to suit their agendas. And it's gone beyond making it a taboo to talk about the behavioral differences between men and women. Some of these people are trying to make it taboo to mention the fact that there are differences between genitals, between chromosomes, between hormones. In other words, talking about the biology of sexuality itself is supposed to be a taboo. And if they win, it will be a taboo, because there's something like 0.0000001% of the population that is triggered if you mention the fact that if they have a penis and a certain chromosome and certain hormones, that they are not what they say they are what they are. That somehow is oppressing these extremely irrational, extremely selfish people who want to impose their will on everybody else. Well, is it okay for a vanishingly small percentage of people to tell everybody else what they can or cannot do? This all adds up to an anti-intellectual and anti-scientific view on things, and they are coding these things into law. Could you imagine if the right-wing Christian Republicans made a law that states that saying that evolution is real is illegal? Can you imagine that? Well, we have the same goddamn thing happening on the other side of the aisle. Except it's not evolution, it's some other form of science denial. You've heard of otherkin, perhaps? It's a cluster of genders, or it's considered to be a cluster of genders. In other words, you could be foxy otherkin, or a kitty cat otherkin. In other words, these people are saying that pretending to be your own conception of a certain animal is somehow a gender. Okay, let me say that again in different words. Being a cat is considered a gender. In other words, if you pretend to be a cat, that's your gender. Now folks, I have absolutely no problem with pretending to be some other kind of animal or fantastic creature like an elf or anything like that. That's all fine with me. Absolutely fine. In fact, sometimes Tabitha is my tabby kitty cat. She's a good little kitty cat, even when she's bad.
Yeah, good. It's fun to pretend.
However, codifying these things into law and forcing other people to recognize that you are a wolf or a fairy or a kitty cat or something like that, that's an entirely different story. See, your rights end where mine begin. You don't have the right to use the law to compel me to bend to your will like that. It's not that I don't want to do it, I just do not want the law to make me do it. That's all. It's a matter of principle. And also, if it impedes upon science, in other words, if it becomes bigotry to say, well, scientifically speaking, you're a human being and not a kitty cat. If you want to make that illegal, then that's also science denial. Well, to hell with that. Animals are not genders. Animals are living beings. They are species, but these people consider animals to be a gender. So you could be a boy, a girl, a cat, an elephant, or even made up stuff. Some made up alien species, or some sort of angel or demon or whatever. And to tell a person, you're not a cat, you're a human being, is against the law in Canada, and it will not stop there. It will keep going. It will go as far as society allows these psychopaths to go. If you learn this stuff in college, as I have, you notice that they use a lot of big words and terms: biological essentialism, Western educated, industrialized rich democracy, social constructionism. But really, when it comes down to it, a lot of these big terms are just hiding the fact of what it actually is, which is they want to use the law to force you to agree that what they pretend is real is real. For example, a person wants to pretend to be a cat, and even though she has a vagina, and she has certain chromosomes, and she has certain hormones, if she says, I'm a male, and I have a penis, and I'm a cat, and you do not agree with her, then you are breaking the law. That's what they want. They want to use the law to force you to pretend that their game of make-believe is real. That's what this comes down to, folks. So how is this any different than religion? It used to be illegal to not go along with everybody else. When everybody else says, oh, there was a talking snake, and there was a Garden of Eden, and that's why we die, and there was a Tower of Babel, and oh yeah, there was a world flood, and somehow these people managed to get 2 of every species on that boat. It used to be illegal to not pretend that that is true. And now in Canada, and they're going to try to make this happen in other places, it is illegal to not agree that their game of make-believe is real. That boys are girls, that people with vaginas are actually people with penises, and that people who are human are actually cats or worms or foxes or whatever. It's the destruction of objectivity, the destruction of science, of fact, of intellectual freedom. The freedom to say that 2 + 2 does not equal 5. They want to do away with that. They want to decide what you can or cannot say is real. Oh, and then there's things like fairies and elves and pixies. So apparently now elves are a gender, fairies and pixies are a gender, and things like puppies and foxes and bunny rabbits, these are genders? Genders? Sorry folks, that's not what that word means. You can keep trying to change it all you want. Sorry. Efforts to remove things like evolution and geodating the age of the Earth, and things like that will return again. This time, however, it will have the support of the far left, because it'll be coming from Islam. Yes, this will happen in the near future. We'll have a return of science denial in the name of religion, and it will be accepted from the left because it'll be Islam. And it will be rejected from the right because it's Islam. Hypocrites to our left, hypocrites to our right, hypocrites all around. In closing, To hell with this anti-scientific, anti-intellectual, science-denying efforts, whether it's coming from the left or the right or from anywhere. Thanks for watching. Peace, love, freedom and equality, love, life, light, liberty, and leaping laughter.